Welcome in. You are listening to another episode of keepthechange.co.nz's Money Mail. Good to have you tuning in, leading in with a bit of Teach Me How to Dougie, because this week I was doing some teaching of my own. Down there at Wellington College, talking to the Year 11 boys, giving them some insights as to finance, the economy, money, inflation. Actually really dialed in on inflation for a good 20 minutes for them. I won't teaching no one how to dance, that's for sure. But it's tricky to know at that age, do they really get it? Do they care? And I'm sure if you've got teenagers and you're listening, or maybe you can remember back to when you were a teenager, at that age of 15, I think you're sort of just about to start to see how the world is working. Some of them were already making money and earning, so a lot of it was becoming, really real for them, but it's hard to get something out of them. I started off the same as last year by challenging someone to come up and share with the entire year group what their big goal was, and no one was brave enough to do that. And I use the words brave enough because I think you do need to be brave to be able to do that. And I started with some examples around Conor McGregor, Israel Adesanya, and Richie Mo'unga visualizing different things like that to show how goals and visualization and affirmations and things are really important. And you won't always hear about that in New Zealand culture, but there's nothing wrong with that if that's the path you want to go down. So unfortunately this year, no one was brave enough to stand up and say, look, I want to captain the All Blacks, or I want to take a rocket to space. I'm going to clean up the CO2 emissions in the country, whatever it is. And I do think part of it is because I wasn't standing at ground level with them. I was standing up on a stage looking down. So they would have had to come up onto that stage and be above their whole year group, which makes it really probably scary again, because naturally if you're looking to something higher, you're looking up to, and it's sometimes when you're looking up to something, it's a bit more authoritative, and you're so visible if you're standing at a height like that. So I think that could have been part of it too. But I think for all of us, it's so important to have goals and to be able to talk about them, and fucking especially in this country, right? Because we just need more of that. We just need more people going out there saying, this is me, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to achieve, and I don't really care what you think about it. If you like it, awesome. If not, it is what it is. But that's how you start to attract people that are going to help you, that are going to say, oh, go and talk to this person. And they want to help you get close to those goals, because there are some really cool Kiwis in this country. But if we're not vulnerable enough to talk about those things and teach people at a younger age as well that it's okay to do that. It's fucking easy to do that when someone's succeeded, right? And look back and look at Adesanya, and he's talking about affirmations, for instance, and Conor McGregor talking about making things happen and goals and what he wants to achieve. And you kind of go, wow, yeah, well, like that's cool because I've done it, right? But when you do it, it's so valuable to be able to revisit the fact that one day you wanted to be able to do that, and you probably then end up setting bigger goals and stuff as you go. But I just think that's something that we can all probably think more about and be better at as a nation. I saw before actually with the Let's Stay with the Kids, so they were relatively engaged. I had some data and some stats and sort of drove home inflation for a good 20 minutes, because I think that's really important for them to understand, because I do think that they're in that year and they're in that era where by the time in 10 years' time when they start getting serious about buying a property, it could be too late. Like it could be, that may just not be a thinking path for them. It could just be like, fuck that. But I was trying to teach them about inflation and then investing to offset inflation and thinking about KiwiSaver and the likes of that, and putting some money aside firstly once you start getting paid, not at the end of it, avoiding debt, heaps of avoiding debt type conversation as well. Bad debt, that is, interest-free student loan, credit cards, and just bullshit that ends up robbing your future self. And just getting ready, because if that is a goal that they do have to own their own home, then they actually, this sounds really bad, but they probably need to be thinking about it at fucking 15, the way that the housing market is going in this country. And we looked at some data recently where the average household, the average house cost 3.2 times or 3 times the average household income back in 1990. That wasn't that long ago. I was 3. So I'm 36 now, and now it got to about 8 8 times something, 8.2, 8.4. And then I think it's probably sitting around 7 to 8 now. And, then of course you get, oh, but the interest rates were lower and all of that stuff. Yeah, were higher back then and we had a different economy. The key is it's going to make it really hard to pay off debt. And we're going to be servicing debt all of our life. And the get to 65 and have cleared your mortgage and stuff. Fuck, that could just be something that we look back at our parents and the baby boomers and stuff and go, shit, that must have been nice. Imagine what that was like. That's probably just not what the future of New Zealand's going to look like. And no one's getting loud enough about that. And so I just wanted to give some reality to these young fellas of basically, you need to start thinking about this shit pretty soon, if that's the path you want to go down, because this is what's happening. But I just don't think it sinks in at that age. But anyway, I stood up there, I gave it my all, I delivered it as I would with a corporate who's paying me $5,000, etc. I told the boys how you can make it $5,000 doing this in an hour as well, and to hopefully show them just the difference of things you can do in your life and the doors that it's unlocked for me. And I read an awesome quote on the way back actually and wrote this one down, and it is that you can't get twice as much time, but you can become twice as valuable. Boom. That's a goodie, right? That is often what we talk about, is not just thinking about, working harder and getting more hours and stuff. That's one way, and that's a good lever to pull. But if you can become more valuable, then that's really, really good too, because you can become twice as valuable, and that could mean you only have to work half the time, or you could earn twice the amount in the same amount of time that you used to earn your figure. But anyway, that's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today too. Now, I just want to touch on an article that I posted up this morning, which is Saturday morning at the time of recording this, and it was someone buying a house in Dannevirke. Yeah, that's where I grew up. That is my hometown, and this story feels relatively similar. Basically, the title is, "This Mum of Two Brought a Home While on a Sole Parent Benefit." Now, you can imagine the comments on this, right? Probably needs to be a whole podcast on this, to unpack some of this and some of the things that people have said. But basically, you want to go read the article. So Google search stuff, "This mum of two brought a home while on a sole parent benefit," and you can go through the article. It was written by Kylie Klein, maybe Klein. Anyway, if you Google the title, you'll find it. 25-year-old, 2 kids, left school at 18, moved south to try her hand at farming, discovered she loved it, moved up to the Waikato a year later. Anyway, all the details are in here, but fairly sure they had a KiwiSaver balance. Being on a benefit, she wasn't sure what she would be able to buy. She had an income of about $46,000 a year with a background in motor mechanics. Donaldson supplemented her income buying and selling cars, a hobby she got approval for from Work and Income. She said that being on a benefit was not a barrier of getting a mortgage. ANZ actually gave her a cash back as well. She was able to prove to her bank her income was stable and was able to prove to borrow $240,000. $240K, that's it. That's all we're talking here. That was the pre-approval KiwiSaver she built up during her time, and the cash she'd built up. She had a deposit of $48K. Well, that's fucking good going to have $48K when you've been on a benefit as well, and probably trying to feed 2 children, right? So unreal to be able to build up that sort of deposit. So sure, some of it's KiwiSaver and then their own cash. Don't know what the split was between that. And I think they found a 3-bedroom property, an asking price of $205,000, and borrowed $156,600, used to hold KiwiSaver for the deposit. So borrowed $156 rack. Now let's just have a quick think. Let's say $157,000 times by 0.6 roughly. That's about $9,500 of interest to service every week. Now, of course, you're going to have people that read this and be like, what the hell? Like, our taxpayer money is buying this person a house. Well, really, it's servicing the debt. But also, they would still be receiving this benefit, right? So then that's going to go somewhere, probably paying for accommodation, whether that be rent or their rent would be subsidised, I'd imagine. I'm not entirely sure how benefits and stuff work, because I try and go so far the other way that you don't need to know a heap about that. But obviously, that information is there with the MSD if you want to. I'm trying to teach people how to not need the government and whatnot. And I'm not having a crack at anybody who takes government support, just saying that there are ways, and if we learn some of those, then we can become a bit more self-sufficient, and then we can help other people ourselves as well. So, fascinating reading some of the comments and stuff today, some real supportive stuff, and I just posted up the photo of the headline, basically without a lot of the context of the article, and suggest that people go and read the article to get more of that. But This is effectively kind of my starting point as well. Not me, but my mum. We lived in Dannyburg. She had a mortgage and she was on the benefit. So I can't really be throwing rocks from my fucking glass house, can I? But I did see a couple of people were smart enough to acknowledge that's great. Those kids will hopefully be raised in a supportive environment and they'll learn, etc. And they'll go on to be taxpayers themselves. And that's a long-term investment into those kids' futures by giving them security and things like that, right? Now, that's effectively what's happened for me. So, I'm now in the top tax bracket. I pay a lot of tax. I don't need much from the government. I can't claim anything as such. And I've paid more tax than I have if I was still an employee and things like that. So, I've kind of gone through that journey a little bit of potentially where those kids are now. So I can see all sides to this. I think the other thing for a lot of people to remember is it's easy to maybe get upset, because I think where the upset bit comes from is because it's so fucking hard to get a house in New Zealand, right? And then we've got a story about someone on a benefit who can get a house. Well, the house is 200k. Let's just start there. And they had 48k, so they've effectively got 25% as a deposit. Pretty good going. But they also say that at the end of this article, I guess this is the key point too, they say, there's a correction since I last looked at it. This article mistakenly said Donaldson's work ended when her youngest son was 5 months old. She worked until he was 18 months old. We apologise for the inaccuracy. Okay, so the final paragraph, which I thought was really a key part of the story, was I think it's awesome actually how much support New Zealand government actually does give people. It's been a huge relief knowing they're able to support me on this journey. And that, I think, is part of it. There's so much support in this country, and 1 in 2 households aren't paying any tax. They're net not contributing because they're taking more than they pay. So I find it interesting that people will have a crack at someone like this when they're probably receiving funding for their children in their household because they're eligible for it, so why not, and the different forms of government assistance. It's hard for a lot of Kiwis to be throwing rocks from their glass house saying how others shouldn't receive government support, when effectively 50% of them will be receiving more in their household than what they are paying. And that's the interesting bit, and I think that's good for all of us to remember. Now, they also say, I think it's awesome actually, wrong one. It would be unfortunate for me to sit on the benefit and not continue to press through other goals, she says. Now that my youngest son is 3, I'm eligible to look for 20 hours of work. So it's not like this person is staying here forever and they're like, I've got my fucking house now, you guys can pay my mortgage down, thanks for coming, God bless, this is outstanding. True social payments, etc., whatever the terminology is, probably from things that I've read, and I don't know, this is just one way to think about it, designed to be a safety net for people like this to then get them to the next stage of their journey to then carry on and to not need that assistance. When they stay there, yes, okay, we can see why that becomes frustrating, but this is, I guess, a really interesting story, and I'm sure the comments on social media and shit will be nuts. But I think, again, it's a reminder, like, why are we getting upset about this? If we are upset about it, you don't make the rules, I don't make the rules, she didn't make the rules, ANZ didn't make the rules, the real estate agent didn't make the rules, but this is what the outcome is, because they're all playing the game within the rules, and that's what we all have to do. And unfortunately, things aren't fair in life. Taxes certainly aren't fair because we all have a different definition of fair. But hopefully this turns into a good story over time, much like Lizzie, who I interviewed with the Next Advisory podcast, where basically she was on the benefit as well as a solo parent. And now, again, same thing. She ends up in the top tax bracket, employing people, looking after them, providing for their health and different things like that. So, sometimes as well, the payments to people in these situations are an investment, much like my mum, who then looked after me, raised me the way I turned out, and I'm like, fuck man, I'm going to go hard down this path, and here I am on a Saturday for free recording podcasts to help other people learn to think about different ways that they could do more, earn more, pay more tax, contribute more, and not be as fucked off and triggered by these things that we will continue to see because taxes are unfair. So, she got hers, let's all go and get ours. Now, let's get into this week's Money Mail because it's 15 minutes in. Jeez, I'm sorry people. Bloody hell, I told you I needed probably 2 podcasts just to cover those 2 topics. Can yarn. The ultimate inflation hedge. Inflation is still here, and it's been here for some time. You know that, and I know that. Don't switch off because we're talking about inflation. This is important, okay? This is important. Sure, it's coming down, and that's better than it going up. But last week, I read a survey where 89% of respondents were worried about inflation. I hope that's not you guys. Probably you would tick a box like, yeah, I'm a bit worried about it because you know how fucking bad it is now, right? But there's still going to be inflation because that's the way that the system works, the economic system works, of having inflation and wanting prices to go up. Now, then look at rates. Then look at insurance. Those are gnarly. If you've got rates and insurance, you will know what's happening with those. And we all need to understand that inflation is always here. It might not be at the rate it's currently at, so it might not be around 5 to 7%, even 4%, but it's always here to some degree. And I know you don't want to become a professional investor to protect yourself from inflation. So then what else can you do? One answer, just one answer, is to invest in valuable skills. This is a good hedge against inflation over time. Well, why is that? Because if you have those skills which are an in-demand skill, it doesn't matter when they are needed, i.e. what year, people will still pay for them. Being good at something, leads to increased earning potential, i.e. higher paying job opportunities. Increasing wages can offset the eroding purchasing power that comes with inflation. Essentially, if your income grows at a rate that outpaces inflation, you're better positioned financially. You can't do that with low skills. You have to become more valuable, which is what we spoke about right at the start. Same amount of time, but how can we become twice as valuable? Then we get paid more. What about employability? I don't even know if that's a word, but let's just keep the change. We're talking numbers and shit, not bloody English, so I just threw it out there. Employability. More valuable skills can make you more employable across various industries. This can be crucial when unemployment rates are increasing and job security is low, which is the economy that we're in right now, right? And it's going to get worse. Freelance and side opportunities. Valuable skills, especially in the digital world, can open up opportunities for extra income or side income streams. These income streams can provide financial flexibility and a hedge against inflation. So if you've got some skills that you can turn into money, you've got an inflation hedge. What about career progression? Whilst others sit on their hands because there are no opportunities to grow at the moment, you don't. You keep investing in yourself, in your role, and that keeps you competitive in the job market compared to other people because they're sitting there thinking, oh, there's no opportunities. Learning and skill development can lead to roles that are more insulated from economic downturns, providing stability during inflationary periods. Regardless of how high inflation is, learning new skills leads to personal growth. Now, I was speaking to someone this week, and they're so good at what they do that they're actually unwell at the moment, but they have to work because they're the only person that can do it. And that kind of sucks for them, but at the same time, it means that they're very valuable. They can now tuck that up their sleeve, and when they have their next discussion around pay, they can say, well, hey, remember that? Remember when I had to come and do this and help support everything whilst I was sick and I couldn't really recover as fast as I would have liked to? Well, hey, I want to get compensated for that. So if you can become more valuable, you can hedge against inflation. Now, that means we have to invest in skills and our own growth, and that's going to enhance our adaptability to changing economic times and make you more resilient. So let's be real. It's important to choose areas of skill that you're going to invest in wisely, not just willy-nilly skills that you think are cool that actually no one wants. So you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get into AI, man. I'm into AI now. You know nothing about it. You don't know how you're going to monetize that, but, oh, that's the hot thing to do. Why not just stick with things that people want and you're actually going to do, and that's going to then turn you into an income-earning machine? And I'm not saying just ignore trends and whatnot, but if it's not actually going to turn into income, then is it wise? But of course, for some of you, understanding AI will be very important, and that will be a good way to hedge against inflation and whatnot, because other people will look at it and go like, don't get into that, you don't need to. So focus on skills that are in high demand and likely to stay relevant in the future. Here's some examples that I put down: technology, sales, healthcare, lead generation, renewable energy, digital marketing. These are all examples of fields that have shown strong growth and resilience. That's just from my observation with clients and the economy over the last decade. Now, in New Zealand, we know that we've got a $200 billion infrastructure shortfall. Well, I'll give you the tip. We undercook all of that stuff, so it's probably 600 billion. It might even be $1 trillion. And actually, one of my good mates, who is one of the best engineers in the country, sent me he's probably listening, I always introduce him like that. He probably wouldn't say he is, but he's at some conference, and it basically says, what does $1 trillion mean? And if you were to charge users, so I didn't get the context of this, but I assume that means to sort out the infrastructure in the country, it'd be a 38% increase in household spending on infrastructure services. If you were to charge New Zealanders, it'd be a 21% increase in the average tax paid per taxpayer. Oh, okay. Mike, you're not going to like that one. We've got a podcast coming out soon where he's like, the councils and the government need to be careful about increasing taxes. I'm like, mate, it's coming. Charge future New Zealanders, the next generation, those 15-year-olds that I was talking to this week, 98% increase in debt to GDP ratio by 2051. So if we want to do $1 trillion worth of infrastructure, we'd have to basically double our debt to GDP by 2051. I fucking guarantee you that that's what's going to happen. Those two things. We're going to increase taxes via different forms, and we're going to increase our debt to GDP. Now, it's 2024. 2051 is still a long way away. You think, like, no, you're not going to be doing that. I wish you could bet on it, because I will be betting on it. Maybe betting on it would be me stopping this podcast right now, getting a plane ticket and getting the fuck out of New Zealand so I don't have to help pay for it. But I'm here. Let's do it. Let's get it done. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to stop this. But it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out. What it is going to mean in the infrastructure space is it's going to be a shitload of work, right? So I was telling the boys yesterday, I'm like, don't let anyone tell you that trades aren't good in New Zealand. My word, they're an inflation hedge, because if you can build a deck today, you can probably build a deck in 10 years. Sure, the materials might get more expensive, but the labour units, etc., will too. And you can then offset inflation by saying, well, mate, it used to cost $8,000 to build a deck. Now it's going to cost you 28. Suck it up. And then someone like me who can't build a deck because I don't have those skills is going to go, well, I need to swap my cash for the deck. So here you go. Here's the 28K. Let's get on with it. And given that people love their properties and love renovating them and improving them and all of that shit so that they can make more tax-free capital gains or increase their equity to then be able to borrow more and use leverage, well, people like to invest into their properties. And if you've got skills that allow people to do that, then you're going to get paid. And people are going to pay you to do that no matter what the cost is. Yeah, you'll have economic downturns, but those are very valuable skills to have. Similarly, you might be an electrician and you might be able to wire someone's house for them, and that saves them XYZ retail price, and then you get a credit effectively on your side where they're like, well, mate, I'll come around and I will fucking build your deck, and I'll put the spa pool into that as well, and get my mate who's a plumber to come and sort the water side of that. I don't know how any of this shit works. Obviously, you can tell because I'm not a trades type person. You seen these hands? You can probably, yeah, you can. So that means that you can sort of swap skills as well. And Kiwis are obsessed with property, so it's going to carry on until there's enough people that aren't as obsessed with it. But then what you're going to find is there'll be 50% of people who own homes, 50% that don't, and the people who do own them are still going to want to upkeep them and all of that stuff. So they are still good skills to have as a blend, because they can save you money and they can make you more money. Here's something else. Our population is aging. More people will want retirement care and health care. Who's going to provide that? I've got a feeling that we're going to move towards private type healthcare where the wealthy will have like a live-in nurse and those sorts of things. And we've touched on that briefly in a pod, but like if you're getting to the end of your life, what do? You fucking swap money to make sure that your life is better. So if someone can afford to have some on-call nurse care, health care, whatever, they're going to pay for it. They're not going to be like, nah, don't worry about that. Let's go to bloody Botswana butchery for a steak instead, or let's nip over to Europe and go on a trip and hopefully we don't die while we're over there. They're going to swap the cash that they have for a better experience for them or their loved ones. And I can see that space getting bigger. And of course, people are moving into aged care as well. So that's going to be an area where places need to be built and things like that. But the country's going to look very, very different. So you've got to try and figure out where is this stuff going, and what skills can you have to ensure that you become inflation proof as the country changes. Now, that brings me to the fact that too many people overlook how valuable they already are. And you need to test that in the private market to find out. I did a range of stories this week around how you need 4 things to make more cash. And I went through that. They're on Instagram if you want to go and watch them. You know, those things have cost me thousands of dollars to work out. Buying courses, reading, studying, making notes, practicing, testing, reviewing other people, looking at what they're doing, going to university, for instance, looking at my clients, building out a client base for Next Advisory. Tens of thousands of dollars and hours go into that. And I can tell people are watching that being like, no, fuck off, mate. Like, I'm not doing that. That's lame. You know, like, why am I going to post up on my Instagram with a black screen with some pink writing saying, hey, does anybody need a babysitter, willing to talk more about it, send me a DM, or hey, got microcarpa for sale, or hey, looking for 3 people who need tutoring help. Because you're not paying for it, or some people aren't paying for it, they'll be like, they're just going to dismiss it and scroll on to the next thing and go and watch some fucking stupid video of a cat pissing into the breeze and it freezing because it's so cold in Poland or something, and be like, oh, fuck, I'll send this to my mate. Meanwhile, they could be putting something on their social media themselves and making some more cash, and stop whinging about the shit situation they're in, or look at inflation, or look at what Adrian Orr's done, etc. It is what it is. We're all facing it. Here's some tools. Sorry, started ranting there. But it highlights that when you don't pay for things, you don't take them as seriously. But I promise you, there are courses you could pay to go and learn exactly what I taught on the story this week. And people have come to me and said, fuck, that worked. I can't believe it. Even people were replying, like, oh, hey, they could even tell that there were templates that I was using examples. They're that, like, oh, yeah, hey, talk to this person. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, these are examples of things you could say on their social media. And someone even said, I watched the whole stories and I still wanted to say to you, like, hey, I'd buy that or whatever. Which just shows how effective they are. So, you know, there's so much free information out there, which then probably devalues the really valuable stuff that you do see. But you yourself, you already have value. You are valuable. You are good at stuff. So stick to that and test it in the private market. Use the concepts in Money Mail 195. Why can't you see your value, and go and find out, you know, what you could be doing to ensure that you can earn a bit more if you need to hedge against inflation. Somebody said to me this week that basically they learnt a lot from that episode. They went from employment to contracting. They've made more money, and it's been really valuable for them. And they had to see their own value first. Anyway, most people will probably end up going down some massive rabbit hole that doesn't really interest them, and think that's the thing that they're going to do. So I think it's so important to stick to your personal interests, as this significantly impacts your ability to show up and keep learning. As an example, for me, I continue to grow my business, to learn about marketing, to do marketing, to make offers. I look at writing, how do I get better at that, my speaking skills, and those things lead to income beating inflation. So I'm not learning to look after wealthy elderly in their final years, even though I think that could be something. That does not interest me, and it's not my skill set, so I'm not going to focus on that, even though I think money's going to flow there. But I don't really want that in my life. Apologies if that sounds bad. I'm not that guy. I'm not very good at that stuff. And so I don't think it would be smart for me to go like, fuck, that's how I'm going to make myself inflation proof, because I just don't, it's not an interest for me, whereas for other people it will be. So skills. Focus on yours. Investing in valuable skills can be a strategic move to hedge against inflation over time. It not only enhances your earning potential, but it also increases your adaptability and resilience to economic swings. Now, we touched on this before, but why this is important is because when you're more adaptable, then you worry less. And that's just like my friend here who follows Keep the Change, and they messaged me and they said, I want to let you know that 24 hours of work was cut in the last 2 weeks due to lack of orders at work. I wasn't surprised because I've been listening to you and Mikey for over a year, brackets bang on and on about this stuff. They didn't put that, but they're probably meaning that. But did have a moment, and only a momentary moment, of internal panic. Of course, that's natural, right? Holy shit, we've just lost 24 hours of income earning capability. Over 2 days, I had to allow myself to process it and do a gratitude list of a few things which reminds me where I've come from and come through hardships, and kept telling myself, I can do this. Israel Adesanya? Anybody? Affirmations? I can do this. I can, I will, I must. I eventually messaged my other part-time job. Holy fuck. Action is the antidote to anxiety. So I eventually messaged my other part-time job asking for extra hours, and was immediately pulled in to train on night shift so I can keep working both jobs, and signed up for DoorDash in the weekend. I am 56, by the way. The only thing to do is take action. If that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what does. That is pretty bloody cool. Valuable skills mean that this person can be adaptable. This means less worry. good. Solutions are always greater than problems. Only 3% of people surveyed in a report I read from America at the start of this year said that their main New Year's resolution was to get better at their job, role, or career. So you aren't competing with as many people as you think you are when you invest in your skills, when you become more valuable, when you invest in your capabilities in your career. So please continue to invest in your skills always, because inflation will always be here. Have a great weekend. You're one of over 10,000 recipients and 6,000 on LinkedIn. The KTC podcast had over 68,000 downloads in April. Please share a lesson with somebody else that could value some of this content. Hopefully they then get hooked. Shout out to Matt, who I met this week. Colleague introduced him to the KTC pod. He said to me, shit, in the last few months I've gone through 100 lessons. It's changed my life, which is amazing to get feedback like that. That means so much, and it's really cool to hear people talk like that. Did you know KiwiSaver funds under management hit $108.6 billion in the March 2024 quarter? I don't know if you've checked your KiwiSaver balance for a while. Of course you have. You would have done that on the 30th of April, wouldn't you? Because you would have done your month end. Well done. But some of the American markets have been going pretty well, so people are seeing higher levels of KiwiSaver. But as we know, markets can dip and they can drop. Also, I should have said this at the start, but thanks to everyone who's been in touch around the sponsorship and partnership with Generate KiwiSaver. I believe that 100,000 Kiwis with better financial literacy will create a better New Zealand, and the team at Generate KiwiSaver scheme are helping me reach this goal. Head to generatekiwisaver.co.nz/change to find out more. I've had some really cool feedback from some of you who are members of Generate, and just other people saying it's awesome to see a Kiwi company support someone like me with this vision that I have. So thank you for all those kind messages. There'll be plenty more to come. There's a couple of good podcasts to come with a team at Generate too. It opens up some access to some smart people there that we can learn more from. That's been a bit of a ripper of a Money Mail, bit to cover there. I'm sure we'll touch on some of those convos and topics a little bit more in the coming weeks. Be good out there. Keep driving forward. I'll see you on the next Money Mail.